Does thermodynamics put God on the ropes, or does it put a rope around the neck of evolution? This is Genesis Week. And a welcome to this episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy, made possible by the supporters of Core Ottawa, Citizens for Origins Research and Education. Excellence in pirate broadcasting, and coming to you all across Canada on the Miracle Channel, we continue to bring you the information the anti-creationists don't want you to see or hear, and we give glory to our Creator while doing it. Remember, if you get lost in cyberspace, you can just head on over to genesisweek.com where you can find us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and get extras like Crevo rants and full interviews with our guests. I'm your host, Ian Juby. I had a pile of viewers writing in asking about an article claiming that an MIT doctorate had Christians terrified by his thermodynamic formulas that explain away God. Apparently, atheists had been posting this article all over the internet and harassing Christians and creationists with the downright delusional title, God is on the Ropes, the brilliant new science that has creationists and the Christian right terrified. There are several reasons why I say the author is delusional. The first being that every creationist I asked had never even heard of the research paper, which was 2 years old, let alone its author. So evidently these terrified creationists are the author's imaginary friends. The creationists who did read the paper, because I asked them to, weren't at all impressed, and with good reason. To help us understand this technical subject and article, I've asked a friend of mine to join us on the show. Dr. Andrew McINTOSH is a professor emeritus in thermodynamics and combustion theory, University of Leeds, England, where he has lectured and researched in the field of one of my favorite subjects, combustion and explosions, for over 20 years. Professor McINTOSH's research has varied wildly over the years, including biomimetics, which is the study of nature to develop new technologies, such as in developing a patented novel spray technology inspired by the bombardier beetle. He is a fellow of the Institute of Physics and a fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society and has over 180 publications in journals and conferences and has lectured globally on the subject of origins. Welcome to the show, Dr. McINTOSH.
Yeah, nice to be with you, Ian.
Before we get into this paper in question by England, would you mind taking a moment to explain to the viewers what is thermodynamics and what does it have to do with creation or evolution? Good luck with that.
Well, look, Ian, you know all about these things, but as you say, the viewers often get thoroughly confused on these matters. Basically, thermodynamics is the study of heat flow. Thermo, heat, dynamics means movement, okay? So it's the movement of heat. And you and I have done a program, in fact, you might refer to it. You might give the link to this other program that you did, where you had kindly read one of my earlier papers, where I made it very plain that there is basically a principle, even in what's called open systems, that you're never really going to get something for nothing. There's no free lunch. You always, when you do some work, you always got some energy which doesn't do anything, and we could call that wasted energy. The technical term is, per degree, it's entropy, okay? So there is a famous law which lots of people get hung up about, including those people who are not our friends, who basically misunderstand the law. The law is basically that in a closed or isolated, I should say technically, environment, you cannot ever get more useful energy than what you started with.
Right.
Okay? So you're always running out of useful energy to do work. that really is the issue. It's called the second law of thermodynamics. Now, many people with triumphalist looks on their faces who oppose the Christian worldview and oppose the idea that creation was by God try to argue, you guys who think that the thermodynamics is against us and that everything's running down and you can never get a free lunch and, you know, that you're never going to be able to, you say that we're never going to be able to get something out of an evolutionary process. You guys have forgotten that the second law of thermodynamics is to do with a closed, or technically it's an isolated system, and you've forgotten that we have an open system in the real world.
Right.
And they think that they've really got us by that. But of course they haven't at all. They've completely lost the plot by saying that. Because nothing will improve if you've got an open system, not fundamentally. Yes, you've still got the sun there, you've got energy coming in, you could even have particles coming in across the boundary, objects coming across. So when we say that you've got an open boundary, it means that it's open to heat coming in and it's open to matter coming in. So energy and matter can get in. Now, they think that that's going to solve all their problems, because now we can get energy from the sun or energy from a star or matter for that matter, come in and we can make machinery. Now, we need to just be careful here. It is true that by adding energy in, it does mean that the overall energy that you start with isn't the same as what you began with, okay? And indeed, if matter comes in, that matter could also break up and produce energy. And, you know, you basically got a starting point which isn't fixed. That is the issue. Now, if I add a load of energy to an open system, does that suddenly give me more useful energy? That is the issue. And the answer is generally no.
Right.
Not unless you've got a mind which can usefully use all that and make that into something useful.
And that's the key word right there, mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes intelligence. Because, for instance, the one example I provided in one of my Crevo rants, which got me into a whole lot of trouble, oh boy, I simulated putting a frog into a blender. It was definitely a simulation, but apparently my simulation was pretty good. I got into a lot of trouble for that. But my point was that we now take our frog soup, which is, hey, it's taking cells, entire cells, proteins, amino acids, and we take energy from the sun, shine sunlight on it, shine heat on it, and we do not get life out of it.
I guess you got into trouble with the National Association for Preventing Cruelty to Frogs.
Probably that was one of them.
Is that what the problem? But you're quite right. All the amino acids are absolutely no use, Stanley Miller found, unless they're all left-handed, right? He was producing a nice lot of energy, zapping across ammonias and all sorts of other chemicals. But it did him absolutely no good, because there wasn't an information, there wasn't a mind to make that into something useful. Now, is it James England? This guy...
Jeremy England. Jeremy England.
Sorry, Jeremy England, begging his pardon. But Jeremy England is a physicist. He's a bright guy from MIT, and he thinks he has found the underlying physics driving the origin and evolution of life. And he basically says that if you get a lot of energy together, shining on basic chemicals, you'll get it right. And he's really just repeating an old position, which is not new, which has been going on for many, many years by people who say, okay, Andy, it's true that generally speaking, you won't actually increase the information or the the organizational content just by shining random energy onto a system. But what they propose is a sort of compensation view, which says that the amount of useless energy is going up in one part of the universe or one part of the system, while in another place, the amount of useful energy is going up. So what they'll say is that the amount of useful energy is going up in one place and going down in another. So they're basically saying that overall, yes, the amount of useful energy is going down, but while it's going down, you can actually get some useful things taking place.
Right.
But to be frank, that never actually happens. And nobody has ever produced an experiment which denies the basic point that I've made in my papers, that even in an open system, unless you've got the organizing ability there already, like a solar cell, which is an organizing instrument which takes in energy and converts it to do useful work. Unless you, and I call that a machine, right? Unless you've got that there to begin with, you're never going to get anything more just by zapping a lot of energy about.
Yes, because what England actually said, and I'm trying to be respectful, to me this is the most preposterous quote, but this is what he said. Quote, "You start with a random clump of atoms, and if you shine light on it for long enough, it should not be so surprising that you get an actual plant." End quote. Now, my rejoinder to that is it's much simpler to produce, say, a car, an inanimate object that is a restructuring and reorganization of atoms, than it is to get a living plant, which takes in that energy.
Yeah.
And as you say, it has actual biological machines in it. These machines take that energy to build the plant.
And he even quotes snowflakes, which is, to be frank, I've dealt with in my own paper. If people want to look at it, and please put the reference to it, the International Journal of Design and Nature paper, I've actually dealt with this matter of snowflakes. Snowflakes do go through a change of organizational structure, but they are simply reflecting that which is within the molecules already, which determines that crystalline structure. It's not making anything which wasn't there in principle to begin with. So this goes back to the issue that there has got to be a principle of organization there already. There's got to be a mind, you might say, or a program, call it what you will, which actually organizes the energy and makes it do something useful. That is the whole point.
All right. We've got to take a 1-minute break. Stick around. We'll be right back to continue this discussion.
The Complete Creation video series is just that, an exhaustive look at the science, philosophy, and theology behind the creation-evolution debate. In this 12-DVD series, Ian Juby starts off with a 1-hour presentation for the children in God's little creation. He then follows up with almost 11 hours of lecturing for the adults as he walks you through the debate starting at its surprising history and examining the evidence from biology, geology, physics, paleontology, and archaeology. Chances are any question you have about the creation-evolution debate is answered in this video series. With open captions for the hearing impaired, the series is both entertaining and educational. There are also free resources, such as question and answer and proctor sheets for homeschoolers. You can now get the entire set as an instant digital download or on DVD. Visit Ian's bookstore today.
Before the break, we were talking with Dr. McINTOSH about an article on thermodynamics and evolution. Now, Dr. McINTOSH, this paper brought home a point that, especially when discussing thermodynamics, is a major key that I always home in on, and that is the origin of the first life. And here he's clearly referring to the origin of the first life. You start with a random clump of atoms, and if you shine light on it for long enough, it should not be so surprising that you get a plant. And just a couple of shows ago, I mentioned this, and I had a couple of viewer responses that were quite blunt, saying that no, evolution does not include the origin of life.
It doesn't. It never does. Never has done. And the rank evolutionists will never claim that.
And yet, here it is. Again, with England talking about the origin of life with regards to evolution. Now, it's interesting to note he talks about shining light on a random clump of cells, but then when you actually read the paper, he starts off with, we first suppose that there is some coarse-grained observable condition I in the system, such as the criterion, the system contains precisely one healthy exponential growth phase bacterium at the start of a round of cell division. Well, wait a minute. He was talking about the origin of life. Now he's talking about how he starts off with life. He started off with a bacteria in his thought experiment.
So his thought experiment is nothing to do with, in the end, abiogenesis, which is trying to form life from non-life.
And the key there is the word program. So when he introduces a bacteria into his thought experiment, it's not just a bacteria. He's including the bacteria's information. It's program. It's DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can't, there's no such thing, as I repeat, as a free lunch when you're dealing with thermodynamics. You never get something which is in, a perpetual motion machine. That's another expression of the same point. You'll always get some loss all the time. And it actually applies, interestingly, John Sanford deals with this and has suggested it, that really it would seem that within information systems, which is very closely connected with what we're talking about, that there are really laws to do with information exchange. You'll never get more information than what you began with, is another important principle.
Yeah, and to make an analogy for the sake of the viewers, let's take a CD, a compact disc, which of course has lots of information written on it. We'll leave it out in the sun. Well, there's light being applied to it. That light is not going to put more information on the CD. If anything, it's going to deteriorate the CD, and you're going to lose information. So it's very much akin to DNA over time.
Yeah, very much so. So there basically is a law which is that information in biological systems is not defined by the properties of matter and energy and is non-material. It's transcendent to it. And another important conclusion which comes out of our paper is that information in biological systems is never increased just by random events. It's always dependent on that which you had there to begin with. So these are the issues which are not properly being addressed, in my view, by present-day evolutionists. And indeed, many Christians just don't seem to be aware of these issues.
Right. And I like the way you put it. The information is transcendent to the material, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
The information stored in the human genome, in our DNA. And they've now transcribed it. How did they transcribe it? They converted it into digital information, which is stored on a computer. You can download it off the internet. Yeah. The same information is stored as molecules in the DNA, or magnetic stripes on a hard drive, or ones and zeros on the internet.
Yeah.
The information is outside of the matter, is what you're getting at.
Yeah. The first principle of information is this, that apart from creative intelligence, information cannot be derived from nothing. There has to be a precursor bank of such information. And that's very similar to the conservation of energy principle.
Oh,
and the second principle is an interesting point, isn't it, Ian? See, here's the second one. Apart from a sustaining intelligence, all information degenerates in terms of its functional utility. Information will corrupt unless it is sustained by an intelligent agent. Now, that is very similar to the second law of thermodynamics, but it's written in terms of information. Now, you do need to be careful here. Many people think that the second law is about information anyway. It is not. It is simply about heat flow, right? And you've definitely made that point when you did your earlier video a couple of years ago, or whenever it was. So what I'm saying is that there seem to be principles of information which are parallel or a parallel to the laws of thermodynamics. And I must admit, I think I owe a lot to John Sanford for bringing this out. And then there is a principle of information gain. Now, this is really what I was getting at when I said that open systems are not the answer to these evolutionists who try to make out that eventually, given enough time, the sun will produce life on Earth. This is the principle of information gain. The information content in a system is never greater than the total of that which was there already and that coming in through the boundary. And that is, if you like, that's a law in its own right. It's similar to the thermodynamic law, which I outlined earlier, because I said you'll never get a machine to raise the free energy in a non-isolated system. You'll never get a machine more than what you had to begin with. In other words, just by random events, you won't get suddenly 10 million solar cells forming. If you haven't got a solar cell there to begin with, you won't be able to get a machine like a solar cell arising by accident. Now, that's to do with thermodynamics, but there is a parallel to that in the information. That's what I'm saying. Just like I was saying that you won't get machinery just randomly, which is to do with thermodynamics. In information terms, you won't get an information system either just by random events, random energy coming in. That won't do anything.
Right. So to make another analogy, let's talk about a computer that has information on it. Consider it an open system where we can put information in. It can take information in from the outside world. But if you're just throwing random ones and zeros at it, that's not information. It has to be directed information from an intelligent source.
You got it. Absolutely. And so it may have not come over very well to your viewers, but it isn't simple, this subject. But basically what I'm saying is that just as there are two laws in thermodynamics, conservation of energy and a running down of useful energy in an isolated system, with an extra law, which I am maintaining is true for open systems, which is that you'll never get a machine by random effects to raise the free energy locally to do useful work, even in an open system, right? You could zap with the nearest star, that is the sun, as much as you like, but you won't get a useful pump or, how shall I say, you won't suddenly get a motor car, you won't suddenly get a spaceship arising, or people will say, well, of course, that's ludicrous, you never get a spaceship. But that's effectively what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that the machinery of living systems, like I mentioned photosynthesis, which is itself really a sort of machine because it's taking in random energy and converting it to sugars, right? You'll never get that occur in an open system, right? I'm maintaining that is almost a law. Okay, I'm not going to say it's a law because there's not enough people recognizing it as a principle, but it's certainly a principle in open systems, right? So information systems gradually run down, right? And there is a corollary to even that there is a principle of information gain, that the total will never be more, as I said earlier, will never be more than what you've the total of that which you had there to begin with, plus maybe extra, extra computers come in, somebody gives you a gift of another device which has got more information on it. You see what I'm getting at? That you'll never get more information just by random effects. That's the point.
Programming requires a programmer. The question is, who is that programmer?
Well, that's basically what we're saying. So people are basically just trying to get around the obvious, really, to my mind, which is that you need a mind.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, Dr. McINTOSH. I had so many viewers writing in and asking about that paper, so I know that many will be greatly appreciative of your efforts to explain all of this to us, as am I.
Okay. God bless you all.
Dr. McINTOSH has several papers that are must-reads, such as Information and Entropy, Top-Down or Bottom-Up Development in Living Systems in the International Journal of Design and Nature in Ecodynamics, or his paper from the Biological Information New Perspectives Conference. Dr. John Sanford also wrote a synopsis, which you can download for free at biologicalinformationnewperspectives.org. This interview was edited for television, but you can catch the entire interview at genesisweek.com. All right, I have to call that a wrap. I'm your host, Ian Juby. I hope you'll join me again next Genesis Week. Remember, you can send in your comments, questions, hate mail, and Walmart gift cards to us in a number of ways. You can email us at comments@genesisweek.com, or you can send us a tweet at genesisweek. Or you can head on over to genesisweek.com, find the most recent show, and post a comment there. Or leave a comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/GenesisWeekTV. Remember those words of warning and comfort from the creator of thermodynamic laws, who warned he was going to release all the energy on Earth and it would be consumed in heat. The Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me." We'll see you next week. We are a viewer-supported program and need your support to keep this program on the air. Please pray for us, and if you wish to financially support the program, Canadians can make a tax-deductible donation to Core Ottawa, Canada North Post Office Box 72075, Ottawa, Ontario, K2K 2P4. While we cannot offer tax-deductible receipts outside of Canada, donors wishing to financially support the program can do so online at ianjuby.org/donations, and thank you for your support.